Hi everyone, this is Danai, and today's video is going to be a requested video that one of you asked me to do. I'm going to be talking about those passages in romantic music that we like to call garlands. I'm speaking about those passages that are usually notated in smaller notes than the rest of the melody because they don't belong to the melodic line. They are there to sort of embellish the melody and seen as a kind of ornamentation around the melody. Usually they are fast passages of anything between 3, 4 to maybe 17, 18, 19 notes. And they are there to make the melody sound more interesting, to spice things up in a way. Usually the left hand is playing an accompaniment that is just going through, and then suddenly our right hand has this garland that it is playing on top of it. So sometimes there is also a polyrhythm that is created because, for example, our left hand might be playing triplets and the right hand might have a passage of 14 little notes to play. The nature of these notes is that they connect two notes of the melodic line. This is why they are never set in a way that they're supposed to make sense rhythmically above the accompaniment. They are supposed to make sense melodically. So they might be a chromatic scale between two notes. They might be a different scale or an arpeggio. And this is why they are very special and also seen in a different way from the rest of the virtuoso fast passages that a piece has. So today I will be talking about how I practice these passages and what I think are the most important things to look out for to make these specific passages sound beautiful. So if you're interested in that, then keep on watching. So we are starting off with a little garland of 9 notes above 2 in the left hand. So this is already our first polyrhythm. And then this is followed by 5 against 2. You see this quintuplet that starts with an octave and then goes to a sixth. So in this case, we have 9 notes in the right hand to put about 2 notes in the left hand. So rhythmically, I would say it's fairly simple. You simply have to put 4.5 notes, so to speak, above each note of the left hand. So the left hand second note comes in between the 4th and 5th note of the right hand. Now, an important thing to mention when talking about these types of passages is that perfect rhythm is not what is most important, in my opinion. If you're looking for polyrhythmic perfection, that is much more important in a different type of passage. Here, it's all about the atmosphere. It's about creating a sound world, a color, a sort of glitter, or a sort of atmosphere simply with these types of passages. So although when I practice it slowly, of course, I will perfectly place my left hand where it is supposed to be. When I play through the piece in tempo, I focus more on the character of these notes, on the nature of them. I don't want them to sound rushed, for example. I don't want them to sound harsh. I want them to be kind of soft and spread a feeling of calmness. Even though they are not calm because they are very fast, I try to make them sound calm and even, and that is more important to me than the rhythmical perfection when it comes to this polyrhythm. The quintuplet, I believe, is almost part of the melody. So the 9 notes, I see them as an embellishment. This quintuplet, I believe, is part of the melody. This is why I also play it pretty marked and with a certain kind of intensity. The next passage is this fast passage, which is not polyrhythmic in this case. As you can see, there are 4 notes for every note of the left hand. But even though this passage is not a polyrhythm and it is not a garland in the way that it is notated as part of the melody, it was still important to me to include it because of the pianissimo marking that you saw in the score. I feel like it is supposed to sound like a garland. And this is where my second important tip comes in. So the first one, as I already said, is rhythmical perfection is not the most important thing when it comes to these garlands. The second one is the garlands are less important than the melody. This means that they should also dynamically be less important than the melody. It is not very beautiful when we play the garlands in a forte, very marked way. Yes, it might be technically impressive, but I think the goal here is to make them sound flimsical and airy and like a little bit of fairy dust that is being sprinkled on top of the music. So this pianissimo is very important, and which is also why I picked out this passage, because it really just has to sound like you're spraying it on top of the keys. So when you have these garlands, try to take them down a notch dynamically and make them sound very light. So now we're entering a passage that has many of those garlands. You see the quintuplets coming, and then suddenly there is a garland with 7 notes, and it says 7 to 4, because with 4 they mean the 16ths. This example I find important to include because I just want to again emphasize to not overthink the rhythm. Of course, when I practice the 7 against 4, when I practice it, I will count exactly where it is supposed to go. But there is a certain type of freedom involved when it comes to these garlands. And here, for example, we have the 7 to 4, but we also have the 1 break in between. And this allows for some freedom. So I do take some time there and then just play the other notes a tiny bit faster, the ones that follow. In general, you have the luxury to take time when it comes to these garlands. For example, with this 7 to 4, I will take a tiny bit of time. And then also I am going to include some examples later on where there are more notes involved. And you will see that I'm taking quite a significant bit of time, because otherwise you cannot fit all those little notes into the actual beats that you're playing as a speed within the piece. So be aware of the fact that you have freedom to take time. More important, as I mentioned in the beginning, is the atmosphere, is the calmness, is to not lose this character. And once you have that, you see which speed is required to make the garland sound good. So this one is a very special example because you can see it's a garland with thirds, and it says 14 above 2. This one is not a polyrhythm per se, because 14 above 2 is just 7 and 7. But of course, it is so fast that you're not exactly going to play 7 on each note. And also, I personally opt to play this passage as a glissando, which means that I cannot perfectly control the speed of each third anyway. It is played in different ways. Some people actually play out the thirds. I personally like the way it sounds when I gliss it, because I just find that it gives it this lightness that I'm looking for in this passage. Here again, with the glissando, I take a significant amount of time, even after the garland. And this is a concerto that I'm playing, meaning that when you're playing a solo piece, you have all the time in the world anyway. Now, this place specifically is one where the orchestra is playing with me. But again, I do take the luxury to take some time, and I simply go to the orchestra in the rehearsal and I say, this is a place where I'm going to take some time. I give them a sign and I show them once I've reached the upbeat so that we are together on the one of the next bar. And I find that this works beautifully. And this is the final example. As you can see, this is a pretty long garland and it says a piacere above. The indication a piacere basically means something along the lines of as you please. So you can choose the speed of those notes as you think it is most fit or it sounds the best. So here, this is even in the score that you can take time. But of course, this is an example where there are so many notes in the garland where I obviously take time. And once again, in this case, because it is a concerto, I tell the orchestra, there's time that is going to be taken here and we're going to meet on the one of the next bar. And I'm going to show you where the upbeat is. And here again, I think it is so important to keep the character and the atmosphere going and to not play them too quickly or too brilliantly or too loudly. Definitely remember the dynamic softness and take time, be calm, create this calmness within the virtuoso garland passage in order to create the effect that is wanted by the composer. These were all the examples that I have for you concerning these types of passages. One general tip that I just want to include is that I do believe that a pedal is very helpful when it comes to these garlands. Obviously, don't overdo it, but generally, because these garlands always give us this feeling of fairy dust, or at least for me, I feel like something glittery is being sprinkled on top of something. I think a certain amount of pedal, which is also like something being sprinkled, is very helpful. Of course, yes, some sound great when you just keep them dry without the pedal, and maybe towards the end you filter it out, or in the beginning you filter it out. This is something that you have to see, but in general, the usage of pedal is something that I would recommend. However, as I said, in a nuanced way, maybe you can vibrate a little bit with your foot going up and down. It's what I like to call vibrato pedal, even though that is not an official term. But yeah, to just kind of go like this. This gives this illusion of the fairy dust and still avoids that it is just one big cluster of sound. So this is a tip that I would also include when it comes to these passages. And other than that, in summary, I would say keep the garlands dynamically below the rest of the melody. Take time, take freedom. You really are so free. Don't feel rushed. Keep the atmosphere. That's what's most important. The character should be there. This is what the garland is there for. It's not to be virtuoso. It's not to give you rhythmical hardship. It's just there to create a character. So focus on that the most. Don't look for perfection in polyrhythms. Look for perfection in sound, for perfection in character, perfection in atmosphere, if that even exists. And put in some pedal. I really hope that you enjoyed this video and that you found it helpful. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know how you approach these types of passages and if I got my thoughts across clearly. Somehow while making this video, I realized that I found it difficult to articulate what I was thinking because it is such a hard concept to explain. I find it's all this flimsical fairy dust stuff and I just ended up saying a lot of fairy dust sprinkling, but I hope that my points came across. Let me know what you thought, and if you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to my channel. That would help me a lot, and I will see you again next week in the next video. Bye!